Flying Officer Dara Chinoy, an officer with one of the greatest escape stories of any Indian in any war fought by India. Hello and welcome to my channel. This is Aadi Achint. Today I am here to tell you a story about Flying Officer Dara Chinoy, an officer with one of the greatest escape stories of any Indian in any war fought by India. It was the 10th of September 1965 when Flying Officer Dara Chinoy, along with a couple of his squadron mates, were tasked on a mission to destroy a Pakistani position. They were flying out of Adampur. The 20-year-old pilot at that time was flying the French-built Dassault Mystères fighter bombers. He was just 2 years past his commission into the Indian Airforce. A Pakistani artillery battery positioned just across the border in Punjab was harassing the Indian Army, who was trying to cross over into that territory using the Ichogil Canal. This battery was positioned somewhere south of that canal. These officers were tasked to go and attack this particular Pakistani position so that the Indian Army could conduct their operations peacefully. Upon finishing their briefing, these young officers, eager to join into the battle and not miss out any of the fun, literally did not even have a bite or a drop of water to drink before they ran out to their aircraft and prepared for a takeoff. They all lined up onto the runway as prescribed in the plan, took off on this dangerous mission, knowing very well that the Pakistani positions in that area were very well fortified. Upon reaching close to the target, the entire formation one by one pulled up into an attack position. Just then, when Flying Officer Chinoy started to pull up into the attack role, he felt a huge thud close to the aircraft. He realized there was something wrong. An anti-aircraft shell had directly hit his aircraft and his engine had flamed out at that time. The aircraft was on fire and he had to take his decisions really fast. He looked around, calculated his options and punched out because that was the safest thing for him to do to save his life. After a brief moment of action, he lay dangling in a parachute coming down from the sky, slowly and steadily, trying to observe the Pakistanis down below who were looking at taking an aim at him while he was coming down in his parachute. The Pakistanis opened fire on him. He could actually hear the zing of the bullets as they passed by him very closely. I'm sure he was a very easy target for the Pakistanis who were looking to capture him, and God only knows do what else. At that time, coming slowly down from his parachute, as he landed, he realized that he was very close to the Pakistanis who were firing at him. He could actually hear voices saying Maro and Pakdo and so on and so forth. He realized only one thing: he had very few options left at that time. All he had in his favor was his ability to outrun the Pakistanis. He ran for his life through the sugarcane fields and the grass fields, which probably were not being attended to by the Pakistanis. They chased him down on foot, firing bullets on jeeps, but he was smart enough to evade all their efforts to capture this Indian pilot. I'm sure it is difficult for all of us to realize how this person would have felt while he was running from the blood-hungry Pakistanis who were planning to capture him. He ran and ran and ran and tried to find a place where he could secure himself for a little bit to take some rest and think about what options he had to get back to India. He found a place. Firstly, he took out all the paperwork and his identification as well as any other things that he was carrying linking him to being an Air Force pilot from India and burnt it up. He realized one thing, that the cover of darkness would have been his best friend, knowing the fact very well that the only way to get back to safety was to hotfoot across the border between India and Pakistan. With his recent experience outrunning the Pakistanis, I'm sure he knew how difficult and daunting that task is going to be. He took a little rest, got his options together and started on his journey back into India, alternating between jogging, running and walking. This would have been a place where his armed forces training would have come handy, trying to find his bearings in the dead of night. I'm sure using whatever basic equipment that he had, again using the skills that he had sharpened so well as an Indian Air Force pilot. He tried to find his way back to the international borderline. Not having had even a glass of water before the mission, his throat was parched and he was scared of dehydration. He only knew too well that he could fall unconscious and what the Pakistanis would do to his unconscious body is something that he didn't even want to think about. Eventually, while trying to find his way back into India, he found a well, and it was as if a new lease of life had suddenly came up inside this young officer. Swimming across canals, running across fields, avoiding villages and stray dogs and any other animals that were there in the jungles, he came across a place where he thought this could be the Amritsar-Batala highway. Not in the know of what exactly the war situation was, he was still very scared and hid close by to the highway. He knew sooner or later somebody would come on this way and he would be able to get some help out of them. As dawn broke, he heard some South Indian languages being spoken close to him. He suddenly jumped out of his hiding place and he screamed at the people there as to who goes there. The soldiers who were patrolling that area came into action and pointed their guns at this young Indian Air Force officer. They asked for his identification, but if you remember, he had burnt it all. They literally had to take him into custody before they could identify who this person was. And considering the fact this was 1965, without any cell phones or any fast means of communication, I'm sure that would have taken a little time. Upon realizing who this young man was, the soldiers who had captured him eventually let him go and allowed his return back to his base in Adampur. Upon his return to the base in Adampur, his roommate was quite surprised to find that he had found his way back to the squadron so soon. Within a few days of some minor treatment that he had to undergo for some injuries, he was back in action, flying over Pakistan and conducting missions. Amazingly, this young pilot has had 3 brushes with the other side trying to do his job in the Indian Air Force. Much before the 1965 incident, somewhere in the end of 1964, as a trainee pilot, he had ejected out of an Oregon fighter over the Brahmaputra when his aircraft had developed serious loss of control problems. In 1987, this officer again had to eject out of his MiG-21 aircraft after a bird hit which resulted in heavy damage of his aircraft. The love that this man had for aviation could not be pushed back by these small incidents. He remained a commercial flying pilot after his retirement from the Indian Air Force as a group captain for over 2 decades, clocking thousands and thousands of hours operating transport aircraft belonging to the Tatas and the Ambanis. Thank you for watching this video. I will be back for sure with more and more stories that won't cease to amaze us. Subscribe to my channel, share my videos with your friends, and yes, share a thought for the soldiers standing in the battle lines, for you and for me, once a day, every day. Jai Hind!